started again, and since we are over our 3 hour.
Okay. All right, go ahead. You got that administration thing?
Yeah, if someone wants to move and second the meeting be extended. So moved by Councilor Young, seconded by Councilor Shankar. Actually, we'll just throw that around. All in favor? Motion carried, we are extended. So, Greg, take it away.
Thank you. So where we left off?
Oh, Ray,
I have a question for Greg. Those are not ranked, right?
No. But I think, what Matt's looking for is for you to rank them,
Okay,
right, by the end of the afternoon.
okay.
Well, that's gonna be fun.
Right? And so the piece, there are a couple of pieces hanging out there. The first one is waterfront, and I think we agreed that we would try to disaggregate it or pull it apart and break it into smaller pieces so that it might live in more than one category. You can agree or disagree on that. Right, the waterfront is still sitting right here, and so my question for you is, where do I put those cells?
So as Matt mentioned, one is marina. So that to me, if we're gonna define infrastructure, actually, there was a room when Matt talked about defining infrastructure in the past, is infrastructure is any down facility. Basically, basically your definition, so we define infrastructure as any town facility, so any bricks and mortar, whether it's the new arena, whether it's the marina, whatever, so we would put marina under infrastructure in the past.
Right, so I can think about, for me, infrastructure capacity is both physical assets.
Yeah.
Economic development, community development, especially community development tends to be a little bit more intangibles. So programming, that sort of thing.
Everybody good on marina here then?
Can we make sure also we include those definitions in the document themselves for the readers? I don't think we ever did that for last time. Yeah, for our own sakes as well. And the other waterfront would be to me, my recreation, parkland, which would be, I'm assuming, community development.
Can I ask you, I mean, because that doesn't show up, but I agree with you, but it doesn't really show up in the list. What shows up here for the most part is development stuff, right? So that makes sense here, right? Land acquisition, development, marina, and all of that, but there isn't much here in programming, but maybe that's something you want to revisit.
Well, it's not even, I mean, it's underway. We've got the sign going downtown, we've got the splash pad going in, we've got some work going on at Kelly's with the fence that the high school is doing. There's the possibility of expansion that's probably going to be looked at in 2021. So that to me would be, that's community development, I think.
Sure. Under that hotel, a lot of those say waterfront hotel.
Yes.
I've already got that there. Right? So you've already got it split off. The infrastructure, economic development, and you want to put third here for like.
Yeah, that's parks and, yeah, so Centennial River Walk. But though the Port of Calls, there's improvements going in there this year as well. So there's a number of items that are already underway.
So what's the right label for that?
Um,
Because if you call it parks, it goes back there, doesn't it?
yeah, I suppose it could.
Waterfront engagement, maybe?
Yeah, I think if you kind of look at the previous one, I think certainly engagement along the waterfront from a recreation usability standpoint definitely would go under community development. You can start to then think about ferry project and how that would fit in there as well.
Yeah.
So recreational water.
Connections between waterfront and downtown, really trying to facilitate those, probably following that.
Okay, so what
So if you're talking about
what's the
waterfront
terminology then?
application.
Corey, what did you say? Waterfront recreation?
Yeah, or recreational water.
Recreational waterfront? Yeah, is that good for a terminology? Kind of?
For now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you're splitting waterfront then, are you?
Hmm?
We're splitting waterfront.
Well, marina.
Got marina, recreational waterfront, and then we have the infrastructure waterfront, which is break walls, which need to be added to, capstone, which needs to be added to, that's all infrastructure.
infrastructure improvement, so there's an item, that's a good
Yeah,
item
you're
for
right,
that.
I skipped over that, that's my fault.
That's
Thank
a
you,
really-
Teresa, for correcting.
That's what I'm here for.
You'll never hear it again.
But that's a really good one to capture though, because that's obviously a major issue of all.
It's going to
Flooding
be
along
going
the
forward.
roads. The funny part with all that, anybody follow that, not to diverge too much on this, but how much Morrisburg in the area, how dry it is down there compared with here. So, like, we had this discussion yesterday with the wardens and the mayors, and you got two completely different points of view, the flooding in this end, and then down there, it's dry to the point where, I've seen some pictures with the boat launches and the boathouses are 30 feet away from the water line down around Morrisburg. So that's gonna be an interesting kind of tug of war going on there as that moves forward. We've got to be prepared for whatever we have happen here. We just don't know.
Okay. Quick question just while we're kind of doing the cleanup here. So we have this, right, which I think was a pretty clever split, it seemed to me, right, between tourism and leisure. I guess we can put leisure in here, we just don't have anything to go with it at the moment.
Is that what you got on that green thing, leisure?
Yes.
Leisure programming, is that what?
Well, I think the discussion was, we were kind of sort of where tourism would go, right, and then your split was here, right, it was tourism 1, leisure 2. Right, where leisure was community, right, and tourism was people who are not in community.
Ray, any comment?
What are your three little orphans over there?
They are green, future. So do you want me just for this purpose to throw leisure up as a 4th point here, and then you can decide whether you want to fill it or not?
So I guess that is, and this could exist in a few areas within, but we did talk about green, environmental responsibility and so forth. Does that exist as another item here, perhaps with infrastructure and capacity when it comes to, like we've talked at different times, electric car chargers or electric vehicles, or whatever, whatever it could be. Would we put something like that under infrastructure and capacity? Do we leave it out? Or do we put it somewhere else? It's come up a number of times, we should probably decide now that a few people identified it, so any suggestions on, do we do it, and if so, where do we do it? Teresa, you have it?
I think the last discussion was having, because it does cover all areas, to have it more as a value, or as a, like, on top, as part of our mission, or, or part of our value.
My only question to that is, if we're gonna put it in the mission and visions as something important enough to be there, and then we have nothing specifically about it, isn't that kind of virtue signaling that, hey, we're green, but we're not actually doing anything?
That would be nice.
That's, I just throw the devil's advocate, I honestly have no fight in this one.
I thought we kind of said that the green was right there on that, the operational side.
You know what, I think that is what we had said, right, and so.
But that means we have to add the operational as a 4th pillar at some point too, I guess.
So
there's
let's
another one
have
for
that
that.
discussion.
What if you did environmental sustainability under the community development pillar? And that would kind of start to encompass all those different functions that you're.
Yeah, I like that. Any feedback on that? Because that could include I mean, I don't want to make it a completely wide open, but I mean, we're not going to decide what we're going to do today because we don't know what government funding might be available. If we got grant funding, we'll put electric chargers in, but I don't think anybody's got the appetite to pay for it themselves. But if there's funding for it, why not? So what did you call it again, Dana?
Environmental sustainability,
Sustainability?
kind of just a catch-all really, at this point.
Can I just push back?
Sure,
Because,
sure.
I mean, I'm not sure how you put green here and not here, for example.
Yeah.
But wouldn't we be talking green no matter what the topic?
Well, which is why maybe it belongs there. Or there.
Not necessarily though, that's, and that, and again, I'm just trying to be devil's advocate, if we're gonna put it in the lead vision and mission, and then have nothing here.
Well, great.
I mean, and I know at least one person in town who's been to meetings before, that'll probably raise that, because it's a major focus of first.
Mhm.
And we have been called on in the past, and it's a legitimate comment. If you're gonna put it in your vision and your mission, and claim to be a green, environmental, whatever community, but then not include anything to specifically get to that stage, and then just say, oh, we include it in everything we do, well, that's kind of a,
Wishy-washy.
yeah, that's, so I'm just saying if we're gonna do that, we should probably put something. Teresa?
So that supports perhaps having the fourth pillar, not for the same reason we had that pillar before, but for a different reason, to keep it all, what Sean was saying, as standard.
So do we put it here?
Yeah, you know, and that goes back to having
Wouldn't you have the same argument about fiscal,
responsibility.
you know, being fiscally responsible? Wouldn't that come under every
Yes,
subject? And yet you're
but
not
same
paying
solution,
That's true.
right?
That's
Yeah, actually, same solutions, that goes to operational. But I mean, you can also, I guess you can say it's a value and it is part of the mission overall. But and maybe it's just because it's a political buzzword right now too, everybody's going to agree.
So I'm wondering if that fourth becomes a little bit more of a catch-all that also starts to define how we make decisions. So do we look at it through a green lens? Do we look at it from a partnership lens through the shared services? Do we look at it from, kind of decision-making lens? It could be the title of it or something like that, and then have those types of things under it to say, every decision we make will include a green component. Every decision we make will be looking at partnerships and where the opportunity exists to form those. And then does that provide that fourth strategic?
Yeah, what Greg has to say on that, it sounds great. My only concern is that going to move us back more and more values and vision than actually more, but we can probably fill it in because you can always find something for even green, you can try to find fuel efficient vehicles or something. You can always show something in there
But the deliverable might be a green strategy.
Yeah, it could be an overall green. We could ask for report back, and you could even, I'm sure people do this, and we do have that funding. Maybe we do a service delivery review that focuses on, we add in a green component to that, or we're already doing that in terms of.
Not that I'm aware, but.
No, we did discuss that, though, didn't we, as part of the service delivery review? Teresa, didn't you bring that up about environmental lens on that? So that ties in there. So, okay, just move us forward, Greg, if you're,
Go ahead.
You want to say, everyone good, we'll just define that fourth, or basically just put the fourth category as a catch-all now, or should we define actually the name and the definition of the category before we put items?
Can I tell you what's over here?
Yes, absolutely.
So over here, this is Wake Road. There's a bunch of stuff around operational efficiency. There's a bunch of stuff around technology. There's a bunch of stuff around marketing. There's some stuff around long-term planning, long-term and financial planning, and there's a whole bunch around economic development strategy. Right. So when you sit there, this is what you do all day. So what do you think? I suppose, right, in terms of how you frame that, because my question for you, right, and it's your document, but is it strategic, right? And you say yes. You said yes earlier, right? Or is it worth it to do just as a matter of course?
It might be course, but it's still strategic, because if you don't deliver, then at the end it all breaks.
Then it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So, to me, it's probably one of the most strategic pillars that a community can have. It's your whole purpose of being there, so.
Any other thoughts on that? Because we could establish that as a category now and start funneling items over. It seems like there's quite a lot of them that are in need of a home, but it sounds like they do kind of fit there.
So do you want to try for a label?
Yeah. What's everybody think in terms of a label here, Matt? Did you have a suggestion based on what you just mentioned?
Something about decision-making and planning or something like that. So that way we can start to say, green is going to be permeated through all of our decision-making. And how do we get from A to B? We create a green strategy and then provide us tools to be able to evaluate the decisions we make.
Can we put operational or operations in there somewhere, because it does tie into.
Or operational effectiveness.
That's what we have now.
Oh.
We had efficiency.
Yeah, back
Is there room for a line covering this between the mission statement, the vision statement, and the pillars?
Yeah.
That all decisions will be
Absolutely.
reviewed with an idea of cost saving or however you want to do
Yep.
it as.
Yeah, that's
Green.
commonly done, eh?
Yeah,
Okay, so could we fit that in or sort of in?
That's okay, I mean, I think operational efficiency is definitely what Teresa came up with all. I think it would be a good fitting title, we could keep that, and it would encompass what we have.
And I agree with you, but just not to lose this question, because
Right.
you're solving it in the same way, but lots of times people call it guiding principles, right? So you would live at a more senior level, right, rather than at this level.
Yeah.
And you would say, all decisions will be green, all decisions will be fiscally responsible, we will plan with, with the long term in mind, all of that stuff.
And that, and that's great, but again, it's one thing to say that, then I would think that, as Ray even mentioned, is a good point, you put fiscal responsibility as one of your guiding principles, but then is there any actual action item to make sure that that happens? I think it does need to follow through, so it shows some follow through
Mhm.
for it, just my take on that. And
Good, and I'm just trying to find a good thought.
yeah, no, I just, so are we good with like an operational, whatever, efficiencies, decision-making, planning, or like?
Well, I just had a question for Matt, and he's kind of sort of answered it, but when you're applying for things, for different projects and fix-ups or whatever, and sometimes you have availability from different pots, do you have to word them differently sometimes to, like if it's green, if it's necessary, or, given the urgency of it type of thing?
Certainly, and I think that's what I was trying to drive at, is that I think some of those operational items are on the wall. Really comes back to making sure that we have a plan in place, that we've done our due diligence beforehand, and that we're already considering those things. So my only question would be, do you really want to call it operational as opposed to strategic decision-making or strategic planning, and maybe it's not strategic, but planning and decision-making, something like that, so that way we can refer to it and say, these are how we're going to make decisions, and more than anything, it's being prepared and having those things already had that discussion in place.
Planning is a word we probably want to avoid because it ties into planning. Decision-making, it's not just decision-making, so I don't know if that, is there another word in there? I know it's, wordsmithing this to a ridiculous degree in some ways, but there's gotta be another word that kind of connects it, but doesn't, involve something else. Because operations actually isn't a great word either when you think of it, because that ties into operations internally. And planning is another, like saying planning is another one, so is there
I think Corey's looking at a.
random stuff? How's that?
I'll label it planning and decision-making for now, right, and then we can come back to it. We'll decide what goes on the list, correct?
Sure, yeah, and we can, and actually that maybe we look at the items, maybe that'll inform us on a good title.
They are.
And just decision-making is more of a process than I don't know, there's gotta be another.
And this gives us that 2 and 3 and 5 year vision into the future too, when we need it. What type of jobs and how to do it.
Intentionality?
What's the word?
Intentionality?
I'm okay.
One here is culpability.
That's a left hook.
What about preparedness, operational preparedness?
Yeah.
The one word that Nadia used was resiliency. Would that work?
Operational resiliency?
It's interesting, I don't know if resiliency is not a bad word, I don't want to go back to this, but vision.
Yeah, it's certainly
It's not a bad word out there somewhere.
I like sustainability too, I like that word.
She doesn't mention it.
She doesn't like it? No. She's not. No, I'm just kidding.
different definitions for what sustainable meant.
Granted, but to the point where you were making last Monday, are we looking at having a sustainable community, or are we looking at having a community that's going to grow? Maybe two different things. Having certain things that sustain us as we are is one thing, but looking towards doing things that are going to make us grow, that's, right now you look at the word sustainable, you can take two things out of it, and I think that's what you would do.
And just with your blessing, I'm just, while you're talking, I'm grouping these, the remaining ones on the wall, but, you know, you can certainly relabel them.
Yeah, that's a good point about sustainable, because everybody's got a different definition. Some people would think sustainable is just status quo. But I mean, the scary, I mean, we can define it beyond that. And one of the reasons I really made the point the other night is because you see a futures projected, we've got more people plus 80 in town than we do 40 to 50. And that's scary because you just don't have employment age people. And that's going to really restrict any kind of economic development growth, because you're just not going to see anyone locate here, because, and even Cornwall's got this issue, there's two businesses in Cornwall that are busing people in from Montreal.
Just back to Sean Lawson last week, who was opening something. He's looking for 30 employees and he can't find them. That's very good.
The stat that we keep coming up with at the corridor is at least 150 jobs in Beach Rundle could be filled tomorrow. Some of them are skilled too, some are engineering and things like that. But I mean, Shelley Bacon, Northern Cables will take 50 people tomorrow. Canarm will take a good dozen, if not 20, and it just goes from there. It's actually really, I don't know what Giant Tiger, how they've done, but I know they're always hiring.
They're still looking.
Yeah,
I don't think they've ever been
completely.
filled.
So that's a major issue for us, for any sort of economic development.
And it was the same in Cornwall, when they had their mass distribution centers, they were short people down there.
Yeah, Bernadette brought that up yesterday, they're busing in, I think it's like 200 people from Montreal, and basically putting them up for a week and then busing them back. And the other company that was doing that was Grenville Castings. Apparently it was busing people from the GTA to do work up there before they closed, Yeah, that came up before as well. Candy, do you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, instead of having this as like a horizontal pillar next to your other, these are more enablers and tools, like when I look at, of how to get these three components done. Should it not be underneath it as more enablers and tools and plans and, when I compare this column to the other three, it's just so different. I don't know if it should go beside or under.
And some I would suggest, like the economic development strategy would probably fit better under the that pillar. Same with the branding and the marketing, I see that as more as under Act F versus planning.
Well, is that all the Bernadette?
Let's make the rest of the most part.
Yeah, that's a good point, because maybe we could just move some of these around.
One more bit, zoning and bylaws.
Okay. Yeah, the zoning bylaw really should be up there, the zoning and OP should be up there somewhere, because it's underway now, we should track it, it's also an easy one to year, so hopefully, we can check it off and say complete. Sorry, Teresa.
I mentioned this a few years ago, that once, again, our old one, I don't know if it ever got posted, it didn't get promoted, it ever got posted. And I brought this up, and this is the Board of Health. I'm not sure if it's a current one, but it's kind of pretty. But not that it needs to be pretty, but to sell it, to own it, to have people read it. It needs to be attractive, right? Where ours is not attractive at all. But this goes to maybe principles, or what you were saying, Kim, to have it like as a income, like all-encompassing principle or action or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I like the one page, like you can have this booklet, but I like that one page graphic too.
So
like an overview.
to have one posted at the marina, at the Public Works garage, at the pool, or the council chambers, indeed, you know? I know we talked about that last time, and it just never got off the ground.
There's something we can put in the planning and decision making, make sure that we bring it up and post it. I'm only partially kidding on that, because you've asked for that for 4 years plus, and somehow it hasn't been done. So we should make sure that's a takeaway for staff on this. and Greg as well, that we, whatever we come up with a final concept, we distill it into something that's put on a placard and stick it around, and yeah.
As well as posting the mission statement, the vision statement
Exactly.
in the council chambers on the wall.
Yeah, yeah,
Council
well,
chambers
yeah,
and
yeah,
in the public
Great.
areas and everywhere, so
yeah.
the employees can own it, the community can own it, you know?
Yeah,
Right
let's
here-
make sure that's captured, when we finish this, we do that immediately.
In this case, they refer to something like this as program strategies. So we could make principles or decision-making strategies or
Well,
whatever.
so if you take the economic development strategy, that's gonna be the enabler to what are we gonna focus on downtown, hotel, 401,
Right.
tourism, marina, so, or housing, sorry. So I think, as Kimberly mentioned, it becomes the enabler, it becomes the measurable, that at the end of the day,
Right.
do we have an economic development strategy? And that's, the measurable is to be able to achieve those items.
So you're suggesting you like that pillar where it is?
No, what I'm
Oh,
saying is,
you're right,
we
you're
kind
right.
of break that pillar off and then say, long-term financial planning really should go under infrastructure. Because the way you're going to be able to address those infrastructure improvements, creation of jobs, things like that, really then becomes the long-term financial plan. Technology, I think we covered that this morning in the values.
Okay, let's go one item at a time. I love the process.
Okay.
Let's start with ECDEV strategy. Everybody think we can move that into, or you suggested, did you not suggest infrastructure?
No, like the.
Sorry, ECDEV, okay, so move that to ECDEV. Everyone like that as a concept, to move that item 1 from planning and decision making over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move item 1 over to ECDEV and growth. And long-term financial planning, sorry, that's the one you suggested as infrastructure. Anyone have any issues with moving that over to the infrastructure and capacity goal?
So far, I thought that we essentially said infrastructure was bricks and mortar, things that you could touch. And if you move just a second there, long-term financial planning.
It becomes the enabler. So you're gonna have all of those things, the 1 to 6 at the top, and then you're gonna say, what is the measurable outcome? And that's the long-term financial plan. So in order to achieve the items above, you need a long-term financial plan in place. So, and same with the economic development strategy. In and by itself, it is not going to, it's the enabler to allow you to do those other things.
Can I try it, Pete?
Go
Okay, so
ahead.
the economic development strategy delivers A, B, C, D, E. The long-term strategy delivers A, B, C, D, E.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it shouldn't read 6. It should just
Okay,
read-
that was the question, then,
Yeah.
okay.
So what's the terminology for that? And enabler is a good,
So
enabling,
I've seen enabler before, or strategic document, or,
Plan.
okay, so we'll include that at the bottom of the pillars with a little descriptor, basically this, so,
exactly.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. Everybody, Ray,
I was thinking about something else actually, but let's throw it in here, since we have $560,000 to spend under modernization, shouldn't we have it up there somewhere?
that's a good point for planning and decision-making, modernization, and I guess it's modernization, regional opportunities is another one that ties into that, because those are the discussions we've had with counties in Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. So that's, yeah, we'll capture that, that's a great one, yeah. Okay, so we move the first 2, and they're going to exist as enablers, whatever the terminology is, at the bottom of those 2 pillars. So the third one, technology, you were going to make a suggestion on that?
So there again, I would say
Back.
it fits under infrastructure, because that's, whether it's maintaining what we have or building new, the technology is gonna be part of the parcel of that, how that is achieved.
So that's another enabling aspect that will tie into everything. Okay, and so everyone okay with that, with technology over into the enabling? And,
So it becomes 8 over here? For
now.
now.
For now, yeah, but just as an asterisk, they're not going to exist as the actual categories. Okay, so branding and marketing.
So that is it's the enabler for both the economic development and growth, as well as the community development. So therefore, when I kind of see this, I see the three pillars, they run kind of
Yeah,
down,
and
and
these are-
then at the bottom, the enablers may span one or two areas, but certainly that's visually how you see it.
But we would repeat them, right?
Right.
So yeah, so it's not just one big section of fine print, it's under each, but one may exist in two different areas, so. So, okay, is everyone okay with that? So branding and marketing would be the enabling whatever piece for academic growth and community development?
I guess I don't need to do that anymore, right? Other than, where do these two, are they
So,
of the same type?
so I'm going to say the official plan and the zoning is very much tied to economic development. So that becomes the enabling documents,
Mhm.
is the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw. The bylaws in and of themselves, I think that's just a natural thing that we continue to focus on.
And yeah, so branding and marketing would be
Over here.
because, yeah, and community development.
Both there.
No, community development.
Yeah, they don't have enough.
And then, when Ray brought up the point about modernization, maybe that's the fourth pillar. And that's where you put searching partnerships, sharing services, that sort of thing, because that in and of itself, if you want to make that a true strategic direction, and so that's where maybe perhaps also technology might fit in there as well.
Public transport?
See, I don't know, like, modernization's a tough one for me, because what would we put on, like, you can move things to it, and there's some things that would exist there, but then it does go back to the question of, like, say, public transport goes, there's an infrastructure element to that as well, so modernization could be a big catch-all for a lot of things. I don't know, Teresa?
I think we almost touched on modernization, perhaps not even realizing it, when we talked about shared services.
Yeah. And recreation, it's part of that as well, even with the arena, because we've got Augusta, and
This
hopefully
is,
someday down the road we'll get it into carbon as well.
this is another example of green and fiscal responsibility and modernization all tied in.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the one thing we didn't discuss is where green would exist. So green would be an enabler on everything?
Pretty much, it would be a green strategy would be the enabler for especially infrastructure, but also economic development and community development.
Okay, so we'll put green on all three then as one of the enabling principles, is that?
And I need to be more specific to say green strategy, because that's
Green
going to be
strategy, okay.
measurable.
So green strategies on each one.
And I think from my standpoint, and just an initial thought is that you use that modernization money to start to achieve some of these enablers.
Okay, would we name modernization as one of the enabling principles as well? Because it does take into like everything. So if you did include it as, rather than a separate pillar, if you put it in as something that informs everything, because it really does. Community development could be partnerships with neighbors on tourism and heritage or dining or whatever. Academic growth is obvious, and infrastructure capacity as well, with services across borders and so on.
So if we said modernization strategy, which includes service delivery review, partnership analysis, those types of things, then I think, again, we're coming down to measurable outcomes. So if we have a modernization strategy, here's the 2-3 reports, then
Do you want to do that now?
No, what I'm saying is that modernization could be the enabler.
I understand that, I guess what I'm asking is, if you're pulling pieces from the things we have listed right now, I'm happy to pull them and get them off the list.
No, we're talking about modernization as one of the enablers, not
Right.
as the fourth pillar.
But if one element of that is green, right, then get it in there, right? If one element of that is shared services, then get it in there. If one element is, I don't know, digital transformation, then probably ought to be, then you can take tech out, right?
Yeah.
It is, but we can't take it out of those, what they're saying is we can't take it out of infrastructure or community development if you're gonna have modernization, it's a part of it.
I understand.
So we're back to three pillars?
So let's just review then briefly so we're all clear on what we're talking about for the enabling. So we're talking about the enabling, or whatever you want to call them, priorities. So for infrastructure and capacity, that will include long-term financial planning, green strategies, technology strategies, So those are the enabling elements there, plus, and modernization strategies. So we good on that? For ECDEV and growth, it would be the OP and zoning, the modernization strategies. Was there another one for ECDEV and growth? Oh, branding and marketing was one too.
No, that's under the, oh, yeah.
Yeah, for both, yeah, that was.
And is that one a dev strategy?
That was an enabler, yeah.
That was an enabler as well.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, so, okay, great, did you?
Yeah, talk me through it now. Which ones are cutting across which of the three?
Okay, so infrastructure and capacity would be long-term financial planning.
Only?
Are we putting in multiple?
I think it was.
I think it's mostly infrastructure and capacity.
So just here.
And these are just the enabling, so long-term financial planning, green strategies, technology strategies,
Sorry, so where does green go then?
in here as well.
Only there?
Well, just for now, we're just gonna walk through each one, we'll if we double them up, I think.
Okay.
So green strategies
Yep.
and technology strategies.
Yep.
Was there anything else for infrastructure and capacity?
Modernization.
Oh, modernization strategies, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so ECDEV and growth would be modernization as well. Green as well. I can't even read.
OP and zoning.
This is long-term financial.
Okay, long-term financial, long-term financial under ECDEV and growth as well? I see some nodding and some shaking heads. Okay, so we'll put
Yes.
that in as well.
Tech.
Tech strategies,
As needed.
sure,
Yeah, okay.
maybe a lot of these.
So
And,
they,
and branding so branding and marketing would be ECDEV and growth only. I would think. Oh no, branding and marketing would be community development too. There's, so great branding and marketing would go straight across
Yeah.
to there, okay. And, okay, what else have we got?
The official plan and zoning. Yeah.
Oh,
over here.
No, that's under active.
ECDEV growth would be OP, yeah, OP and zoning, yeah, good catch, Grace, missed that one. No, and ECDEV strategy would be there as well.
I'll clean this up.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Okay?
Okay, so we've got those, so there's, community development, anything else that needs
So
to
do
be?
any of these run across, right? Modernization?
Yes.
Modernization would, yeah. Green would.
Long-term financial?
Yeah, it does kind of, if we're gonna put it, might as well put it in all
Yeah,
three,
okay.
because it does kind of cover everything.
Tech? Yeah.
With Wi-Fi and broadband.
Oh, yeah, good point on that, if we use Wi-Fi downtown or expand anything.
What's the word about?
Branding and marketing.
Sorry. So the only two that stay with economic development then are official plan and zoning, economic development strategy, only three, and then branding and marketing cuts across here as well.
And so the four exist in all three.
5 minutes to figure out what values was. That was the third word down there?
Yeah. It's a small piece of paper.
Okay, sounds good. Any other comments on how we, and Matthew can come up with some wording for that in terms of, but we're all comfortable with the basic concept. These are like the enabling documents and supporting and so on. So anything else, Matt, on that?
No, I like that very much. I wouldn't mind just circling back around to have a little bit of a discussion around public transport, to understand a little bit more as to what that is, and shared services.
Okay, so let's, so before we go back to that, are we good with the structure, with the three pillars, with the added information? A lot of that planning and decision-making, all of it, has been moved over to enabling documents and so forth, so we'll have that underneath. So are we good for that for a structure?
Fantastic.
Do you see
Very
that
good,
as,
yeah.
that's good?
Yeah,
Any red flags that you see or anything?
No, I I kind of tipped my hand earlier. I mean, I'm thrilled to get these here rather than here.
I'm concerned about the ranking. And I know you said they're not ranked that way,
Oh, thank you.
but I don't want dog park and something else to be at the top of that infrastructure list and rank at the
Well,
bottom.
and thank you for the reminder. Let me ask you this, right? We have an hour and a half roughly. So there's some issues around sort of, getting common understanding of what we mean by some of the framing pieces. And then time allowing, right? There is the question of which ones are most important.
Anyone who reads it and sees something at the top of the list will assume that that's the.
That's at the top of the list.
Well, I agree. And so time allowing, I mean, you need to.
That's, that to me, and it's a great objective, but boy, that to me strikes me as kind of tough to.
It's easy to separate 1 from 9. It might not be able to separate 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it's easy to separate the lowest one.
Well, then you might come up with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, something along those lines.
The other part of that though too is, and one of the reasons I just, again, I honestly don't care that much, because the items on the list are gonna be the items on the list. But if we itemize, say you define something as, it's number 1 with a bullet and everything else, and all of a sudden the grant program comes available for number 4, we have to kind of, and I know we can never absolutely
anything.
Yeah, but that's why I would personally stay away from hardcore rankings, simply because I don't think the rankings are gonna be real.
You could do something alphabetical.
Yeah.
Put that disclaimer at the top, put that disclaimer at the top.
Yeah, alphabetical and all, because it gives us flexibility in case something comes up. That's my only,
We don't rank anything in the pillars right now.
No, that's right.
They're all, there's a title and then a bullet point. And
That's
there's a
right.
title and there's a bullet point. It's not ranking anything. So, I mean, if you look at it that way.
I'll let you proceed.
Well, maybe I could ask the question of staff. I mean, would it help you to know, or is it material at all from your side to know that A is more important than B?
So I think
all the county uniforms too.
So I think, there needs to be some, not only vertical determination, but also horizontal. So and what I mean by that is in my mind, infrastructure improvement, sustainability, those type of things, under infrastructure probably should be number 1. If we get our hands around that one, is the number 1 thing you want to talk about. But then also over the next 3-4 years, is it dog park next year? Is it dog park in year number 4? So those are the 2 things, and we don't necessarily have to do that today. I think we have a lot on the wall to be able to start to say, okay, once we flush these out a little bit, do we go back at it and say, is there value to understanding? The same with when it comes to economic development. Do you want us to focus on the downtown or hotel? The marina, those types of things. So it's just from a staff perspective, where do we put the resources and what do we focus on?
Well, let me throw it back at you. Wouldn't that be part of the primary discussion of long-term financial planning?
Exactly. So
that exists beyond this discussion.
Absolutely. So I would say here's the enablers on the bottom, and that once we have achieved those enablers and those are the measurable ones, then how do we start addressing each of those? Because we can't address all of them in year number 1, nor can we, nor are all of them achievable in the next 3-4 years. So
This isn't a 2020 strategic?
no, so it's just a little bit of conversation, and maybe that's not a conversation today, but maybe it's as you start to put the draft together to move things and pieces around. But certainly it starts to help frame those staff plans.
That to me is just gonna be the toughest part of this, but it also goes back down, because, you can have the discussion even here, like, you can put dog park, to me, I'd love to see some of the low-hanging fruit at the top. Dog park's one of the easier ones. Maybe you throw that at the top because you can do it this year, but I still wouldn't do that, because there are other items that are, to me, more important overall, but they're not gonna happen in 2020. So then you've gotta look at the financial component of it, you've gotta look at when it's feasible to do it, and also the overall importance to the health of the organization, and to connect to what it means, what means the most infrastructure capacity. So that to me is and I think every one of us will have a different opinion on that, and every one of us will be right. So that's my only caution with that, to too heavily into that one today. But
And-
it's all
and-
good, we're not.
I kind of agree with you in terms of, whether we get to that, or through that today, right, but it's probably worth having that as a discussion for next time.
Yeah.
For what it's worth in terms of framing that, there might be a kind of a reasonably simple solution. Sometimes you would just simply rank order in terms of time, right? These are year 1 projects, these are year 3 projects, these are year 5 projects, as an example.
That's a great idea, to rank them that way too, that's one possibility. Ray, and then we have.
And where do we consider the answers that we received from the public survey, such as the lighting of the walkway, which was second on the list, as opposed to the dog park, which was
Was that not?
So
the
that would
on
be,
the list?
yeah, that'd be recreational waterfront, and then that gets back to whether we, that's the planning beyond, so if we identify this as a strategy, then we've got some sort of concessions, or I think we have to really decide what's feasible, what's affordable, and, I mean, there's, that's all the work that Matt's talking about, beyond this, to kind of make their lives easier, so we're not bouncing around, one year we wanna do this, the next year we wanna do some other cockamamie thing.
I'm just thinking.
That's an excellent
We
point.
went to the effort to do the survey, people are gonna read this and say, geez, all those ideas that we had, there's nothing up there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's, and I'll lean on Greg on when we do that to define, because these are the top high level stuff. There's obviously stuff that exists below it, so if somebody asks about that, I say, yeah, it's under recreational waterfront. So I guess we're gonna have to define I would say fairly rough, but specific, if that makes any sense. So we're not locking into, we are going to do LED lighting and the blah, blah, blah. But if we say we're gonna look at options to light the waterfront or whatever it is, and we put it in below that, and I would suggest, because staff has those items, that would be the round 2, if staff can plug some of those in, and then we debate, well, no, I didn't agree with that in the recreational waterfront, it should be under here, or it shouldn't be there at all. That's when we break that down. Does that sound like reasonable stuff?
It does, and I think you are distinguishing between strategic and operational, right? So if you take lighting as an example, not strategic, is it important? Probably is, right? But where does it belong in terms of this document? Probably under maybe that plan, I don't know. But it's an element of one of those plans, so it's not getting lost. It's just somewhere other than this document.
Yeah, and it could, again, reference could be back to recreational waterfront
Yeah,
or something. Leanne?
Also like to see too, I mean, there's some items on the list that have been on the list
Mm-hmm.
for quite some time.
Yeah.
Dog
Like the
park?
dog park has been on the list, hotel has been on the list even before my time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I like,
Talking before you were born.
well, I haven't been around like you, but this, we would say. But I mean, I like to see, this is what the citizens want,
Yeah.
right? And so we need to be able to listen to what they want and see what's been on the list for a number of years and try to accomplish that,
Yeah.
right? Put the action into play.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah, great point. The hotel one was such a tough one, and hopefully at some point we can cross that one off, but it's just market forces and whatever, so but it's definitely, get it up there and make it an active priority in the next little while, maybe we can make something work.
So can I ask you, so we have, I can't see, maybe an hour, give or take? In terms of managing that time, we're hanging out there is getting some common understanding of some of these terms. You want to go back there?
Let's, so everyone okay, we'll do that, but let's not break it down into too heavy, because I think we're gonna have to come back and look at that. So we want to do the basic definition of so we'll start with, Matt, you wanted to talk about public transport and some of the items here. Greg, any suggestions on how we do this?
I think just pick them up on that one. It's just making sure that because if you read it right now, right on the previous document, if you read public transit and I read public transit and you read public transit, might be 3 different interpretations. That's where you want to take us, right? Is that they'll have to be the same.
So I guess for me, public transit might actually be an economic development or community development item, unless we want to run it. But if we're talking about active transportation, where our sidewalks in acceptable shape? Are they accessible from a mobility standpoint, things like that? That's what I really want to try and understand, what we're trying to get at there.
Got it, yeah.
Okay, because I can even read some of them there. One says regional transportation.
Can you really
another
from
one-
there?
Yeah. It's somehow-
You're blessed.
But yeah. So I'm assuming, is everyone did understand that, not as, like Matt mentioned, like sidewalks and so on. Everybody that put that up there, and it looks like everyone did, it's regional transportation, like a bus connection or something like that.
I think the ferry's on there.
Ferry's
Oh,
there.
ferry as well, okay.
Very good.
So I guess the first question would be, because Matt makes a great point, if we're not gonna run it, specifically even the ferry, we're contracting out if we do it. So public transportation, would that go to Devon Grove?
Or community development.
Yeah, it could really exist in both. I would lean more to Dev,
Me too.
but it's got a good point for community development too. But let's agree first of all, does it fit under infrastructure and capacity? And I think if we use Matt's definition, it doesn't. Leanne?
Great. Just lost my train of thought. Public transportation, in my view, why wouldn't we want to run it? Right? Why wouldn't we want to run,
Cost.
the cost?
Spectacular, yeah.
Okay, because of the cost, okay.
But the one point, and I guess we don't run it, but I mean, we're exploring options now, like this is, it's not a big secret. We've talked to Brockville at different times in the past, and there's a possibility we'll have something coming back to council on options here in the not too distant future. But we wouldn't obviously run the system, but we'd have to be some financial stake into it. And do we not also, there's a possibility for provincial funding once we're tied in, because once you get access to the gas tax, I'm not sure how exactly that works, but there's a possibility of tapping the funding. So we get a good point, because we could possibly, like, we're not gonna own it, but we're gonna run it to a certain point. But it also, it is different from what Matt suggested as the infrastructure definition. So it probably, my suggestion, Greg, what do you think? Like,
Well, the definition is probably shared services -1, right?
Personally, I didn't see public transportation as having anything to do with sidewalks and roads.
yeah.
I thought that was under infrastructure improvement.
So could we say regional transportation in that case, in which case, said that twice, could go under economic development?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'm seeing some nods. Greg, what do you think about?
It's fine with me, I'm just reading the pieces of this, you can be via regional transportation, bus service, ferry service, right? So is that shared services, or is that economic development?
Well, shared services, I think we're talking mostly about infrastructure and water and sewer to Edwardsburg. I'm assuming that's, so if we did call it regional transportation and moved it to Devon Grove, is everybody good with that? So we know what the definition is, it's potential bus, potential train, and potential, because the VIA thing's coming up shortly again too.
Yes.
I've got to update everybody. I don't actually know anything yet, but it's a meeting coming up in early February. So if we just do regional transportation and move it to Devon Grove. Mike, Jill, sorry.
Well, the only thing I was saying when you were mentioning the hotel and the long-term ones that have been on there forever, couldn't we, if we're shrinking this more, assign an asterisk to the top 3, say? And the only time we deviate from them is if an emergency came up in one of the others, but it's from a funding standpoint. And that'd be another guide we could use to eliminate the long-term ones, the ones that have been hanging around for some time. And if there's, a need elsewhere, we could always swap around, particularly, and like I say, from a funding standpoint, because money runs the whole show here, and we have to take that into consideration.
Well, let's try, the time we have, let's try, because I think we're going to be a little while on this. If we could restrict ourselves today, and it's a lot accomplished, to the definitions, we understand what the items are, finalize this list, and then we'll talk like ranking and however we do, whether it's time, it's money, it's low-hanging fruit, whatever happens. We'll kind of move things around for next time. We'll agree on the basics today, unless somebody comes up, of course. We're not closing anything off today either, if anybody has anything we've forgotten. So is that okay? We'll look at that. So shared services was the next one up. And Matt, you want just to
Okay, I'm
really,
just not sure what it says, so I just
Okay.
wanted to kind of go through this.
we probably should,
So you pick out a few.
yeah, please.
Partnership agreement with Edward Bird Cardinal, fire, for example, fire, regional focus for decision-making, coordinate to drain northeast quadrant, Prescott is pivotal with South Grenville, Augusta Township cooperation, fire, and so on.
I guess my question is that kind of move into the modernization strategy, which then we said was more of an enabler, as opposed to something that's under infrastructure in and of itself.
It's a really good point, because it does tie into all of that, Corey.
I do think that's a very important category moving forward though for the future. And I know what you're saying, but it's under modernization, but I think it needs its own section.
My 2 cents, I mean, because you can make the modernization argument for all of it. I mean, it's modernization almost by definition, right? I think.
Yeah, the only question I would have is the term itself, shared services, isn't clear enough, I would say. So I think we should probably change that to,
Partnership development, that sort of thing.
yeah, and maybe even put in parentheses, water, sewer, fire, because that's really unclear.
Does that help?
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
don't want to restrict it to just that. Do you know what I mean? If you, when you start
EG.
putting, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not a firm definition, we need to put an et cetera in there. But I mean, but otherwise, you've actually got, then you've got the point where, to me, fire services is completely different than water and sewer extension. So you can actually make it, you can make multiple categories of it.
So is it helpful from your side if it's partnerships rather than shared services?
Yeah, I think I know where we're going with that, and I'm wondering if it's more of a community development type aspect where it's providing both our municipality as well as working with the other municipalities to really provide opportunities.
How about cooperative services? Partnership services kind of indicate to me that you have 20% invested, the other 50% invested. You have cooperative services indicates that everybody kind of has their own and they're cooperating to a common good, which I think is what we're looking towards in that section, is it not?
Like it.
Well, and I like the wording, it's just in some ways we're not, because we're selling the water and sewer, they don't have the water and sewer. We're selling the fire, they don't have the fire, so, I don't know, it's a small point, I'm fine with, we change that. Leanne, you have a?
I do like the idea of partnership, because, you know, if, it's so broad, you know, you're talking about water and sewer, you're talking about fire, you could be talking about recreation, you could be talking about a bus service, you know, you could be talking about,
Okay.
operational, you know. Yeah, it's such a broad thing, so partnership to me would be, you know, it's a partnership. It may not be an even partnership,
But it still could include
But
a
still-
wide variety, so
that's right.
do we need to
Is it going
separate
here?
this into different categories that define what we're doing?
So I'm wondering if it becomes an enabler.
Yeah,
Along all.
So
it becomes a what?
an enabler, so a partnership strategy, to be able to say, we're going to partner on infrastructure, ag, community development, those sorts of things, so.
I actually agree with Corey on that, but I think it needs to kind of exist on its own as kind of a, and I see exactly what you're saying, it will feed into that, but there's a value to having that as a line.
I think you need to put greater thought into what that truly encompasses. So
Right.
what are the priorities? Is shared fire a priority under that? Is shared
Well, it's a
transit a priority?
They're necessities.
Is shared water sewer? But I think you
Yeah.
really need to define, okay,
So-
what does that mean?
So my suggestion for this is we ditch shared services entirely, we break out based on what we have there. So we put
And
a
these are
line
your
in there,
Yeah.
so you put a line in there for fire, you put a line in there for water and sewer sharing. So fire services agreement, water, sewer, would be its own line, fire would be its own line. That way it's not just a catch-all, partnerships, whatever, it defines what it is.
And what about the labeling?
I'd get rid of it.
Maybe regional, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, can
Ah,
I have an idea? Maybe instead of shared services, regional partnerships with all those
Sure.
tasks.
Yeah.
But still over here, we should add as an enabler, partnerships should be mentioned again over here as an enabler for all the categories.
Yeah,
What was the second word?
Could we put that in under modernization as the
Yeah,
definition of
modernization is
between regional
something,
partnerships?
yeah.
Sort of regional
Yes, yeah.
Partnerships.
partnerships.
Yeah, so fire, water, what do we have under there? Fire, water, and sewer, Greg?
Yes.
So is everybody,
Collaboration, you would say collaboration over there.
What's happening over here?
yeah, no, that's great too. We just talked about adding that as one of the enablers, development of regional partnerships. Kim, you had the word in here.
Matthew had mentioned collaboration, I like that word too.
We're at the- Yeah, we're running a paper. We're breaking the wall.
Regional collaboration.
That's right.
All the way across? All three? Yeah.
Let's draw pictures.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone good on that, and how we handle that, so we'll change shared services to regional partnership and define that as fire agreements and water and sewer extension sales, whatever language we want to use. We know what it is.
You put an et cetera in there?
What's that?
Put an et cetera? in
Yeah,
there?
sure. You gotta keep some weaselly stuff in there somewhere.
Got it?
Okay, so we all good on that one, so infrastructure improvement, that's another.
That was a bit of a catch-all.
That's a broad one, I'm sure, assuming water towers, sidewalks, roads, and everything's in there.
Brownfields. Yep, you're right.
Okay, so when we finalize this, are we gonna have like the main topic and then like bullet points underneath? So basically for infrastructure improvement, we include the bullet points that are there, we're all good with that, and bring that back. Anyone have any, is that great? That's all.
We're good with this, I mean, and really the only issue we're trying to do is make sure everybody is in agreement with that, the label, right?
Yeah, and what infrastructure means, we're all cool with it. Sidewalks, water tower, that's all the core stuff, there's nothing, anyone that I haven't mentioned. Okay, so recreation complex, that's the no-brainer already underway, recreational complex / arena, whatever we want to call it, so. I'm assuming that's what all those say.
Yes.
So that's good for number 4 is the rank. Dog park, very self-explanatory there.
So,
Sorry?
I guess the one thing I'd like to kind of talk about a little bit, is the dog park an absolute strategic initiative? Or is it infrastructure improvement? Does it fit somewhere else? Or is it equally important to the recreation complex?
Yeah.
Or the pistol.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to have its own item and say completed within like a year. Because I would like to do a refresh of this at least as about a year from now, so you actually got time to sink in.
Could be underneath.
And
Could you put a bullet under recreation
Mm-hmm.
complex?
you could, but we haven't absolutely decided that's where it's gonna go yet.
No,
I
but
mean,
So I could see us almost moving it under community development too, right? Because that's what the community wants,
yeah, but
right? So,
the definition Matt had for infrastructure, we
Right.
are gonna own it, maintain it. So, but you're right, yeah,
Right.
yeah. It
yeah,
absolutely goes in both places. But, so are we okay with leaving it on its own? We could move it after, I mean, we
Yeah.
can still move it, but we're okay with leaving it on its own, because it is something, it's a low-hanging fruit kind of one too. Marina, and all of the stuff there is,
That was around
Greg.
needs and renewal, expansion, some, purchase of property next door, enlarge.
Okay, so are we good with that? We'll put the bullet points, obviously, we've got the dock issues, potential expansion, reconfiguring slips, stuff like that, so that's all there and captured. So we're good on Marina, so that's it for the infrastructure and capacity. The other items we moved over to the enabling, so are we okay with that for today, for infrastructure and capacity? Anything else on staff? All good?
Make the first cut.
Excellent. So Greg, you good with that for
Yeah.
our first
Yeah.
cut of that one? So Active and Grove, we've got downtown up top.
Just a quick read, vacant buildings downtown, how to avoid them, effort to shop downtown revitalization, development, revitalization, promote and support venues, activities in our downtown.
Okay, so imagine we've all got that one.
Farmers Park.
Yeah, that's another good one down. So we're okay with downtown, the title should probably be downtown what?
Development.
Development or rejuvenate. We've used rejuvenation probably too much. Another word would be development or something.
Revitalization.
Revitalization.
Next person, one to number 3.
We've used a lot of words to describe downtown.
Yeah.
They're just kind of regurgitated.
We have the word development in the
There you
head.
go, that's the one, Mike, regurgitation.
Crap, we've been talking about it for years.
I don't want to be remembered for that.
Too late. We do have development on there already in one of our pillars. So we could, downtown development. I mean, we've been trying for years to rejuvenate, right? But
Rejuvenation?
Yeah.
Same as revitalization.
You want to just set it aside?
Resiliency.
Just throw rejuvenation, we can always change it if anyone comes up. We should have something beyond just, hey, downtown.
We do have downtown.
Because this will have to have
Yeah, the old
modifier and so this and so this.
Yeah,
That's
just
been on the list for 40 years now, or longer.
say with the next one.
Yeah.
It's resurgent.
Ooh.
So we're all good for downtown rejuvenation, and the points are there. So hotel, I'm sure some's waterfront, some is anywhere, just guessing.
That's
So we just basically, we put wherever we can get it, I'm assuming, that's the easy one.
Yeah, is that the mandate, just wherever? Like, I think that's what staff are looking for though, is that
It's
direction.
market
So do you want boutique, do you want
But
to change?
Staff can't
Does
drive it.
location matter?
Staff can't drive it, it's market driven.
Yeah.
So we just have to respond to the opportunities. If someone, like, we're not gonna turn somebody down if they wanna put it in 401, we're not gonna turn somebody down if they wanna put it in the waterfront. So I don't think we can be any more specific than that.
So can we say hotel accommodation, attraction and readiness?
Sure.
Because really what we're kind of looking at is, do we have the policy in place, such as the official plan, zoning bylaw, to be able to,
Yeah.
to take advantage of that, right?
And actually, the other one on that is the downtown. What have we done? Because we had Golder in 3 years ago now, and we've never advanced that. What we're doing with the contaminated land down there is a plan for whether it's apartments, it's condos, if it's Conrad Hilton's latest hotel, which I've heard was coming in 1979.
I do like the wording readiness, because we have to be ready if somebody wants to come in, right? We have to have all of our ducks in a row, and if somebody comes in and says, yes, I wanna put a hotel down at the waterfront, we're ready. Yes, absolutely, let's do it.
And there's several steps to get you there.
That's right, but if we go ahead and have those steps ready,
And it's
Like
been,
what, like an environmental assessment and stuff like that?
We've done that.
yeah.
Yeah, and the results are, that's where it got delayed because it's
Yeah.
potentially a very significant thing. Yeah, it's a messy situation is the best way to put it. So I don't know, that's a tough one to prepare for simply because we don't know what the use is, and the use is gonna determine what it is. But yeah, you're absolutely right, we need to be prepared on. So, hotel attraction, readiness is a good, everybody agrees on the term and what's under there. So 401, I'm assuming that's opening up the 401 industrial park, site certification and things like that, or underneath anything else, Greg?
No, that's pretty complete. New industry, you're right, industrial park, site certification, extend water and all of that.
I'd actually put a readiness on that one as well, because that's something we need to be there as well.
Do you change it for you, Mr. Mayor, just to like industrial land though, industrial land development or something?
Sure. Yeah, 601 F doesn't.
Or is it specific?
I don't think we, do you
Again,
want to make it specific to industrial at this point though? I think we need to look at the entire land base.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we say
Decide what
industrial,
the
highway,
highway is.
industrial, and commercial? It's all highway, is it not?
Well, we have to deal with that in the official plan.
Yeah.
How are you gonna market it in the official plan?
So if we just say 401 industrial, commercial land readiness, something like that, that's what everybody.
Okay.
And we're still gonna continue that industrial commercials, we talked about that highway, remember there was a zoning that we talked about a couple of years ago, about changing it to more of a catch-all highway.
Highway commercial?
Was it just highway commercial that included industrial or something like that? I don't know if that's with these planners or not, but that came up a while ago, so we had different types of usage. So, okay, so we're good with 401, everybody?
That might be separated already. West side of Edward Street is industrial, east side, Sealy's Land is highway commercial.
Geez, yeah.
Pierre, that was Pierre's favorite, it was a highway commercial business, and I thought he did, in that last iteration of our plan, I thought that was basically everything south and north of the 401 to accommodate the fact that we can't have a big, heavy building in those properties, to accommodate smaller, more commercial things. I think that's where that came from.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. We have to take another look at that for the OP, because that was one of the questions too. Do we look at smaller parcels? How do we divvy it up? Especially in the south side where we kind of got existing, the smallest parcels. Okay, so we're good on 3, 4, tourism, Greg?
It's really all about tourism strategy. Except that there's one thing here, around the, underneath the lighthouse. So that might go to waterfront, I guess, right? But all of it is really tourism strategy, tourism strategy, tourism strategy. And one of them says tourism/cultural plan.
That was me, I just threw Shakespeare in.
Yeah,
It's
that's
all,
all the same.
part of
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and the market people come to town. And the fort. So are we okay with tourism strategies? We'll just call it that? Is that so broad-based enough? Let's leave the lighthouse in there for now, maybe we can move that after. But if we leave it in as a bullet point, we'll let it exist there for now. And if someone decides we need to move it, we'll do that further down the road. That's good. Everyone okay with tourism? So
Housing, residential growth and attraction, residential growth plan, priority plans for vacant land, develop residential new housing development, and then affordable housing.
okay, it'd be housing strategy too, I guess. So is everyone okay with the items under that? We look for some affordable housing, look for growth overall, look for an overall plan. That's actually something like a growth plan, but maybe that's going too far, because you could use a growth plan or a residential growth planning document to inform us and enable it too. Not absolutely suggesting adding another one, because it kind of exists in other areas, but.
So I think that would be part of the overall plan, and those particular studies will come out of that.
We did a housing study back in the 80s that it certainly wouldn't hurt to update. I don't know whether that could be considered for modernization funds or not, but probably that might be a stretch. But, a housing strategy might give us a direction to go.
Some of the plans had been on the books since the 70s, even to tie in, north end around Boundary Street.
Yeah.
So some of that probably has to be dusted off, please.
Just for clarification, is housing, for my own sake, is it what they said we're not in control of anyway, it's more whatever? Or is it what you spoke of earlier today about the official plan, our decision of whether we want, how much of a density we want in our residential? Like, is it either or?
I think it's both. I think it captured both, so I would see it kind of being housing and then 2 sub-points at least, to talk about, the things that we can do from a readiness standpoint, and then what can we do in terms of encouraging development. So I think there are 2 sides of it, and then how do we work with the United Counties from the affordability social housing standpoint.
And then I think there's still a federal housing plan that was announced 2 years ago or more that hasn't been enacted yet as well. We're talking about throwing money around for that. I forget what the status is there, but I know that was a regional issue where a lot of us jumped on. I don't think there's been any follow-up to it in terms of actually throwing money at to enable it.
I think I see this as 2 parts. Develop the housing on the properties that we already have, and where are we going to get our future housing
Yeah.
after those are filled? Where are we going from here?
Yeah, that leads us around to, if we do anything in Prince Street, if everything works out there, maybe we do Prince Street. There are other areas in town that we have discussed. Craig brought us that plan years ago as well, maybe we take a look at that one again, but just to kind of assess where we are. You know, the one item I would suggest, I don't know if it's noted, I didn't note it myself, is just under housing, maybe one of the bullet points is housing, working with our partners in Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal, because it ties back into the infrastructure, and that's a real possibility. We've actually got it already going with the Augusta Landing thing that Rob Thompson is talking about doing this year again now. So maybe something on regional cooperation on regional housing or something is
That's a little bit of a strategy.
yeah, underneath that, because it does tie into the infrastructure and capacity and some existing projects. Yeah, that's everyone's okay with that. The Rob thing is hopefully going to come up this year as a start. So ECDEV strategy, that exists.
That's the way we moved it.
Yeah, that's moved over,
Yeah.
and OP and zoning
Same.
again. So that's it, the 5 items for ECDEV and growth. Anyone have anything else or any other comments on bullet points perhaps underneath that we didn't touch on? Greg,
I think we covered everything that everyone threw up on the wall initially. Good.
so community development, we've got youth.
Youth engagement, student council rep, programs for youth.
Okay, so would we call it youth programming? Is that, so youth programming and those items, and we know that the youth center has shut down operations as of last week with whatever's happened with the United Way funding. I will mention, I have been approached by the YMCA about potentially doing something there. Rob actually, Adams called me the other day, following on some discussions that Matt and I had, and he's been a really great community partner all over the area. So we're going to talk to him next week, and whatever we can get out of that, we'll bring back to council immediately. So there's a possibility. So I would probably put, I don't know if you want to call it youth programming or youth center revitalization or something for youth. Because I think that there's some real opportunities there with those partnerships. So are we good with just what's there, or anyone have any other suggestions on what we could do with youth?
This hasn't affected, they have a ball hockey thing on Wednesday nights at the Leo, that doesn't affect that.
Well, that's Lee Adams running that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's- we as a kid, but he's a 60-year-old kid. So.
They all come.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So your question is it / center or not?
No, I would just suggest maybe we put that in under the bullet points, but we don't have to tie it to that wording. But we are, just to note that we are going to explore other, I mean, it ties into what we talked about here, but just there's a possibility, whether it's a center, it's added programming somewhere else, or whatever. Just so everybody knows that that's not a dead issue, we're going to try to bring it back. Teresa?
Just a consideration, youth programming and engagement, because one of those stickies is gives an example of, for instance, having a student rep here on council, that kind of thing, so.
I remember we were approached a number of years ago, and we never went any further with it, but that youth advisory committee, Rockville started one, and that's another option there, which I think is probably captured by that one.
You want to hear his bullet point?
Yeah, if it's not, youth advisory, whatever.
Yeah. And that would be similar to like a student rep.
Yeah, pretty much, yes, very similar. Anything else under youth programming and engagement, anything?
Chris?
Oh, sorry, Mike?
Is there anything about they used to bus them to Brockville for Y activities and that, is that?
Actually, you want to just throw in YMCA partnerships, just as a catch-all for that, because we are, talked about that, and they wouldn't mind access to our old arenas, just operating as a community center now without ice, and there's a number of groups using it for Y's talked about, maybe even busing kids down from Brockville, so there's some real opportunities there too.
And so when I'm starting to look at what you kind of listed on the right-hand side there, it's a little bit of opportunity development, youth opportunity development, where they have the ability to access activities, those opportunities, both within the town and beyond.
So are you suggesting relabeling?
No, I'm just thinking that like opportunity development might be something that would be another point.
Oh, got it, okay.
So recreational waterfront,
Heritage.
oh, sorry, heritage.
Preservation and conservation.
Okay, anything else under heritage? Lee, you're the heritage chair, any bullet points you like under there?
Yeah, actually, I don't know how we would shrink this, but in a descriptive tone, we have things in town as organizations, we have buildings in town that are owned by organizations that have in the past and will be in the future become less and less viable. And I think it's something that council at some point needs to take a look and identify these organizations, these buildings, these structures, and see how valuable we feel they are to the makeup of this community, and whether we should be doing something to try and extend their usage or make sure that they survive, or that's not a two-word catch-all, but we have lost things in the past that I don't think we should have lost. And I think looking down the road at what you read in the newspaper and what you hear in the street and what you see going on, there are other things that we may wind up losing. And the question is, how many things do we lose before heritage really doesn't matter anymore? I mean, we hear all the time that, well, we should have lost the town hall on Main Street, we should have lost this building, we should have lost that building. At what point do we start looking ahead and say, well, okay, we don't want to lose that. What can we do to ensure that we don't? And are we going to put public funding into it, or can we come up with an idea, or whoever owns it, to combine with something else, or bring something in from other out-of-town investment or whatever to ensure that that survives? So as far as heritage goes, a forward-looking viewpoint as to, pardon me?
Preservation?
I don't think preservation captures the whole idea.
Is it a strategy?
That's a better description, I would think, of a strategy. Because I think it is important that we look at what we have to see whether it should be kept.
So can I suggest perhaps viability?
What's viable?
So I think there's been
I
a lot.
agree with what he's saying, but I'm just trying to structure what exactly.
So I think there's a lot of discussion now about churches and the long-term plan for churches and things like that. Eventually there might be some consolidation, that sort of thing, but those are very purpose-built buildings. And you take a look at them, very large, usually take up, and they tend to be in core areas. And so I think we need to be a little bit forward thinking on that, to say, be prepared that how are we going to, and do we want to maintain those historical buildings? And how do we enact something now to be able to take advantage of how they might morph into some changing use?
The one issue with that, Chungjin,
Well, I do, but I'll wait for you.
we've had that with the Anglican church, and part of that was converted into a very nice residential dwelling on one side, and they made some changes otherwise. One of the issues with all this, because I was having, so was Mike, when we had the St. Paul's issue, when there was going to be an amalgamation with St. Andrews, and it turned into a congregation vote, and it was, just a couple percentage decided not to amalgamate. And the problem with that is you basically got that dwindling congregation, and where does that go? But because you'd be dealing with political stuff there with the churches and everything, I agree with what Lee's saying. I just, how do we turn that into a strategic priority? And I think it should be captured somehow, I'm just trying to figure out how. Because then you're also tying in historic homes, places like Craighouse, and so, anyways, I'll just go to Sean quick and then to Leanne. Leanne, did you have any other comments on that?
No, I'm quite eager to listen to other people's viewpoints on it, because, I mean, I do have a direction on that I think we should go, but, it's a broad topic, and depending on how interested you are in heritage and how, you know, some people will think, well, hell, just get rid of it and put a new building there. Well, that's fine, but 30 years down the road, you got a new building that is sticking out like a sore thumb, like the drugstore down the street, which doesn't go with the streetscape at all, but 50 years ago was, you know what I mean? It's, Sean,
No
Sean
problem.
has to say.
And one thing I guess, we've also got the CIP, and we developed some, I mean, that is actually helping with some of the reclamation downtown, some huge update. That addresses a bit of it, so maybe, and actually, we don't have anything up there in terms of CIP going forward, so maybe that needs
It's
to be
one
some.
of those things.
Yeah, or one of the sticky, so it'll show up at some point, but it's a tricky thing to get our heads around, because there's no grant funding, and we'd be looking at taking the burden on ourselves to a large part. Sean, you have
One of the things, again, it kind of comes down to the readiness approach that you can help with partnerships. The thing that I think of is in Mexico, and it was kind of interesting because I went there to see this Latin band, and it was advertised, and so I go and it's, you know, the address, and I get there, it's in the church. And my first thought was, well, the church has gone belly up, and, you know, a community group is opening it up. And it really wasn't, it was a partnership between the cultural center, or whatever you want to call it, that brings in the bands and the church. And what was funny is the next day, they actually are having church services in the thing. And I mean, I thought it was interesting. I reached out to Miracle just to see how they dealt with it from a zoning and planning point of view. And
we did something similar with the Anglican Church.
well, and that's what I'm saying. That's all I was saying, that when we talk about the thing, maybe we just take a look at what some of our neighbors are doing to help with the heritage. So that we're not actually paying for it, but we're at least smoothing the way so that they can.
If I could actually look at the Anglican thing, because that was a weird severance issue that may come up again, because remember there's the one side of the building and it couldn't be severed under existing. I don't know how we made that work, hopefully we did make it work.
Well, apparently you did, it happened.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it was done, but anyways, that is one area that could come up with us too, with bigger buildings being kind of severed off into multi-purpose and so on.
Yeah, because like I said, I was truly amazed. This church is still operating on Sunday with mass and everything else. And meanwhile, the night before, we were in there dancing to Latin music with a bar and like little serving tables, like at the pews.
Times change and we.
Times are changing.
Leanne's been very patient, she's been waiting for a couple minutes.
Yes, thank you. So under the pillar that we have now, there is some key points here. You know, explore, purchase, and renewal opportunities for historical properties. You know, and federal and provincial grant opportunities for historical buildings. I mean, those are still viable options.
Do we want to combine them into one item that addresses what Lee was saying, and we're not going to answer the question today, but maybe that, a little bit about preparedness in terms of zoning and so forth as well, so maybe there's a preparedness item that needs to be in there. Teresa, did you?
Whoever mentioned it hours ago, I think that's why we have the heritage committee. I don't think it belongs in our strategic plan. I think it belongs in the direction of the heritage committee. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but I like that point. Matt?
No, I just agree that we kind of took it off there.
Yeah.
We do have heritage here though, so what should exist under that? If we're gonna kind of move everything over to heritage committee, maybe that's one of the bullet points, is work with heritage committee
Yeah.
to develop
Heritage
readiness and so on, partnerships. Does that, I know I'm kind of pitch the ball back over your court with the committee, but it does kind of encourage options, so we, there's a lot on the table.
That could be a
What
plan.
Sean's talking about as well, is that,
Encourage
that too vague?
heritage
Well,
partnerships.
but my only thought, I don't think you can lose it here for the point that you made earlier, and that is that back at vision and mission, where you talk about commitment to heritage, so
It
there
is.
needs to be something here, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but we kind of talked about taking that out of there too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true, we talked about
Yeah.
two different versions, one with heritage and one without. But, so, okay, so the bullet points under this are, if you could again, what were
I
they?
had a sheet.
Yeah, I think it's just a couple,
Yep.
Greg, what were the two that are there in the front?
Oh, sorry, there's preservation and conservation. Preservation of historical records / museum artifacts, heritage conservation.
Okay, so that's kind of the same thing, so if we did conservation, museum artifacts as a one bullet point, and the other bullet point could be work with Heritage Committee and, I would say Historical Society and other partners, readiness, whatever, we,
Yeah, so-
you know what we're
Yep, so I think if you go back to here, so there's the Heritage Committee, kind of having their focus being on not only arbitrating current decisions, but also being able to provide an education for those that have historical buildings. What are the opportunities under provincial and federal programs? What are the tax relief programs, things like that, so that we can kind of encourage that preservation for as long as possible. And then, that from that perspective.
Okay. Is everyone good with wording somewhere to that? I have to lead again, but then I'll back to me.
Yeah, I think Matthew was, made a good point there. Heritage Committee, in my opinion, should not just be a reactive committee, but a proactive committee. And when we see something in the way of a heritage property that we find is not adequate, it's sliding, before it slides too far, perhaps we can advocate for the building's improvement or maintenance, or speak to the owner, see if we can find some grants or something that are available to them, or suggest some partnerships, or maybe suggest a sell place to somebody who's going to look after it. Because really our heritage property is, they may be owned by you, or you, but they're the fabric of our community. They're our history, but then you look, they're going to be here after you, and you're really a caretaker of that property for the time that you own it, and you pass it along, and hopefully down the road, people are going to think as much of it before you owned it as they do after. Otherwise, you wind up with just a bunch of decrepit old buildings that get knocked off, and today we seem to put up a two-story flat roof thing with that doesn't mean anything to anybody.
At least it's better today than it was in the '60s, when it was just this big move to knock everything down and build new, so there's a little more, although it's not as good as it arguably was in the '80s, when we had the LAC Act money and everything else, funding restoration. Yeah?
So back to my, the bullet points, I mean, what I'm hearing around the table is exactly what's in these bullet points that I suggested that we add to our paper right now. I mean, exploring provincial and federal grants, we said, Ray said. Exploring purchase and renewal opportunities for historical properties. These are some key things that are already in the pillar that we have that I think we should maybe downsize it a little bit, like Mary Todd said, instead of the 3, maybe downsizing it a little bit and making it like one sentence or one bullet point or something. I don't know what we can do to downsize that.
Which ones are you choosing?
Okay, so I'm choosing explore federal and provincial grant opportunities for historical building. Explore purchase and renewal opportunities for historical properties. To me, that kind of seems, explore provincial heritage property tax relief program.
Like that? Is that right?
Point the ones we were,
You said here
yep,
and here?
yep, and then, I have explore, purchase, and renewal opportunities for historical properties.
Yeah, that's.
Where's
Go
that?
down.
That's
Two.
five, right?
I
Okay,
think you have two as well.
yeah,
And two?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
two as well, yeah, thank you.
The only thing we can add is the municipal CIP program,
Right,
which wasn't in place when we did that.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we could put promote.
Actually, it kind of was in there, because it was.
We have,
down there.
we have
Was it?
review and promote community improvement plan is already in that pillar.
Yeah, but it wasn't. we didn't
But-
have-
No, you didn't have an actual program.
Oh, no, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? We just didn't have the.
The heritage part.
Yeah,
I didn't include the heritage, yeah.
so,
Okay, so that, is everyone good with that? My only, I mean, we wanna look at this again, that purchase and renewal is a tricky one. And I would like to include work with the Heritage Committee and Historical Society on options, whatever. But if we preserve something like that, that kind of covers all the bases and lets us move forward with partnerships and look at this as options. I just, in terms of, and I don't even know where that came from, Heritage Property Tax Relief Program, I don't think such a thing exists. I
Actually,
mean,
no, there is.
oh, it is?
No, there is, but it's gotta be passed by the council, as I understand it, and then it's actually you guys giving back money.
Yeah, no.
That might be the tough part.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying, there is some towns that have implemented where they use a different mill rate for heritage buildings, so they do, only because I'm on that heritage planner thing, I got one the other day from people asking how it got implemented and stuff. So I do know it does exist, I just don't know that Prescott's really interested in.
That's a tricky one.
Well, it is a very
lot.
tricky one.
It could be potentially a lot of buildings.
It could be, well, and depending, if it's big enough to make a big enough difference, it could really drain.
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't we done something like that already? Like, I was under the impression that if we have a program that if you spend a significant amount of money and improved your property, you would be taxed at the previous rate for 5 years or something like that, at the old rate to encourage development of the meantime.
That's brownfield, that's part of the brownfield, the tax relief.
So
Just,
just
just,
to,
the
I
tax.
thought we extended that.
I don't think we can, I think that was connected to brownfield, was it not?
so we have that for downtown, the downtown area. We have it for brownfield. We also have it for the employment. We didn't extend it to heritage, but it definitely was a possibility with something that you could do.
If we have it for downtown, that is,
Not, not specific to heritage buildings, but specific to commercial buildings. So that's where we could take a look at it from that perspective and just see if it's a viable opportunity under CIP, but certainly the legislation would dictate.
That's always, I know we had that discussion years ago, and it always came down, there was a discussion commercial as well, but I mean, that's an interesting one, so we're gonna pay for, you know, Joe's renovations on his house because it was built in 1850, but meanwhile, the 1950 house next door doesn't qualify. That, to me, gets us into a real tricky spot with residents, but I mean, I'm not opposed to looking at options if there's something there, but boy, that to me is a tough one to defend. But just a side point. So are we okay with that in the bullet points? That opens it up, so I think it leaves a lot of room. If we want to discuss further items there, we can, obviously, this is one we can go back. So recreational waterfront, we got the marina on the other side, so that would be like Centennial Park, Riverwalk, and also the potential heritage pathway, LED lighting, and so on. Yeah, so Kelly's Bay and Centennial, Riverwalk Park, the Port of Call, we're doing some stuff there, and the heritage pathway, which could include the LED lights that we talked about, and was high up on the
On the
residential.
dive site, so.
Oh, yeah. So there's a number of bullet points on that.
Say your name?
So Centennial Park, Riverwalk Park. Heritage pathway. Port of Call and dive site, because it's basically the same. Are we okay with lumping them? dive site.
Dive site.
Yeah, we just put a
Scuba dive.
scuba diving and entry to the water, like
Mhm.
a dock kind of thing. Anything else on the rec waterfront, Tracy?
I'm almost wondering if we need to make recreational and then waterfront being a subcommittee, because other recreational, like stickers around, I'm not sure where they landed, but it was like keeping the existing Leo for alternative recreational events, making the town known as a walking facility, renting bikes out, renting.
I was gonna suggest maybe look at something like that under the leisure, and, because the leisure, I don't understand the category, but if we turn the leisure into leisure
Okay,
programming and facilities, is that,
Sure.
that way it exists as its own, but yeah, that's an excellent point, we do have to add some of those things.
Yeah, and the leisure, this is where it came from, it was a split between tourism and leisure, right, where tourism was directed at, I think you said plus 20 miles, give or take, and leisure would be more inwardly focused.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So on waterfront recreation, marina exists on its own, so anything other than that, you left anything else?
Kelly's Bay?
I just included that under Centennial.
Okay.
We could split it off, but it's. What about that, well, I guess, is it recreation, that one section in front of Prescott Place, in front of the county's building? Where there's the pathway there that washes out all the time, and I don't know, do we need to put something in there for riverside pathway improvements or something? Because the other issue is, as Louise mentioned, like, you know, a lot of that's getting washed away now, maybe we do need to hook it to, what's that?
It's not getting washed away there, it's getting washed away, from United Township building, it's a cement walkway, it's fine, it's just the capstone is, needs to be a couple layers on it.
I'm talking about all of it, like down in Centennial.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'll do it
Very
all.
specific.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't know
No,
what.
it's, you know, we definitely need work there.
Oh, yeah, boat ramp improvements is another one, boat ramp rejuvenation, whatever. Actually, just call it, yeah, get under rejuvenation, because we talked about
Okay.
that as.
Yeah, so I think I would still keep it under that, but yeah, so boat ramp, the active walking trail along the front, those types of things, it seems to go in with everything.
Okay, so we'll throw in riverside walking trails as another bullet point.
Independent of the ramp, or
Yes, please.
the boat ramp,
Which is actually, I don't think we need to absolutely define it, but riverside walking trails would be more, like that's our own property, heritage is a federal. So they are distinctive, maybe because it's heritage pathway, maybe we should say heritage pathway federal lands or something like that. Just to define it, and riverside walking trails are our own. Otherwise, it sounds like we're kind of, throwing both on.
Did we not look at pathway?
No, we just maintain it. I think we do all the fill and everything in there, whenever anything comes up, we've got to fill holes and whatever.
I thought we kept that.
I'm pretty sure we don't own it, because I know because I've talked to them in the past about the lighting option down there, and they said flat out no, because this came up back in the first term, somebody brought it up.
They didn't want to dig, that's all.
Yeah, and they didn't even want to do it for solar, so that's gonna be one of the questions again. But, okay, so that's recreational waterfront, anything else? Anything from staff, have we got everything there? So leisure, if we could put in, Teresa, do you wanna go over what you had, again for the leisure stuff? Cause I think it's a nice fit there for leisure. activities.
Yeah, so like alternative, promote alternative recreational activities, somehow keeping up the existing deal, having good events, like town events be under that, promotion and review of town events, or something like that, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, so maybe facility usage maximization,
Sorry,
facility usage maximization, and as well as just regular town events to promote
Town tourism or something.
yeah, something like that.
Sorry, we had any suggestion on that one?
Well, active living,
Oh, yeah.
Active living,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And we also have our recreational, lending library that we can incorporate, maybe we could incorporate some programming into that, you know? Learn how to kayak or something, you know, under, programming, leisure programming, leisure.
Enhanced recreational.
Yeah, just a recreational programming, studies strategy, whatever that might be.
And your first one was facility
Facility uses maximization.
Okay, yeah, let's make sure that's in there, because that ties into the Leo and other facilities as
And
well.
maybe a little bit more alternative cultural promotion. Something other than hockey and soccer.
Yeah.
Is this where we put Walker? It has senior programs.
Yeah,
What's
and that was always, that actually leads into the other question about Walker House, because we've had that discussion at different times in terms of suitability of building for programming. I'm not saying we go down that road here, but do we put in there is like review current facilities and review current facilities and programming, something as basic as that. Because we are also, when we finish this building up here, when we finish the second floor, we're gonna open up new alternatives there as well, and that's, you know, that's already, we approved that last year, and that, from what I understand, it's gonna be done the next few months. So we're gonna have options there to open up, so maybe that's included under programming expansion, programming changes, whatever.
Would that cover the fact that we had the repaving of Walker House's lot on the radar last year and didn't get done?
It's a little farther beyond, I would say that's farther down from a strategy and
Okay.
goes to straight operations.
I just thought I'd mention.
Oh, it's a good point, yeah, because that parking lot's in pretty good shape.
Actually, it's not the parking lot, it's a street,
Street.
and that's a town street, not a Walker House parking lot.
I didn't think the parking lot was in great shape either, to be
The
honest.
parking lot's not bad at
Oh,
all.
is it?
It gets another winter in there, Bill. It's gonna be really tough.
So anyways, Greg,
So what was the third one?
wording for that is, well, promoting active living,
Yeah.
is that a good one, is this separate?
Mhm.
And the other one is just on, call it program review
And facilities?
oh, you've got it up there, program, recreational.
First one.
Got it.
Also, if I may,
Sure.
also, I mean, leisure is just not recreational.
No, leisure is arts too.
Yeah,
That's
we
right.
have to change that title, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to, you know, make sure it has cultural, I mean, not everybody is into recreation.
Yeah.
You know, some people are more into culture and,
You got the library, if you want to look at it that way as well.
Yeah,
The library and Walker House
Yeah.
are very much the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. we've already committed to this for this year, so we probably should explore partnerships with St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival and other agencies, other festivals, promotions.
culture partnership.
Yeah, I would name that one specifically, because we just put all that money into it, and we've got to do something with that, hopefully to see the investment.
Strategies. Cultural strategies.
So,
Okay. To the highest bidder.
So we've got recreational program study, facility usage maximization, active living, and cultural strategy. Is there anything we've missed? I would, and it's not how I'm gonna die, and I'd love to see Shakespeare mentioned, just because of that investment, and because it is. And it wouldn't be a bad thing, like, for something about cultural strategies and partnerships with groups like the St. Lawrence Shakespeare Festival, Parks Canada at Fort Wellington, and Parks Canada at Fort Wellington, RTO 9, that kind of captures some of the majors, something like that. I don't think that's getting too specific, because there are some of our major partners in town, and if we can find a way to break in the RTO 9 and get on that board.
Shakespeare and art.
Shakespeare Festival,
AE,
Yeah.
EA,
Yes,
yes.
Shake,
Just put the shade S.
SPEAR, PEAR.
There.
That's it. Fort Wellington.
RTO.
Oh, RTO 9. RTO. RT, no.
RTO.
Yeah, sorry. And that good for examples? Anything else? And we're just gonna call it just straight culture, is that good, or culture and recreation, or culture and?
Culture and leisure, wasn't it?
Culture, oh, is it culture and leisure, okay, whatever everybody wants.
This is gonna be put on our website, so I'm sure most people wouldn't have a clue what RTO9 is.
Yeah, we'll define it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, just putting it in for now, so it's,
Including
and
the
it's actually,
spell, right?
what's actually even called, isn't it Southeastern Ontario?
Yeah, it's Southeastern
Now,
Ontario.
They just changed the name, so actually we'll have to, but we could also even just say regional tourism opportunities, along with the two local ones. That way it includes everyone. Because there's other partnerships with the province, Celebrate Ontario, all that stuff. Okay, anything else under this, under leisure and culture overall? I think we're pretty good, we've accomplished a lot, and obviously this is not the final, so anything else from staff on where we are with wrapping up today? Anything, Matt, anything you've identified that we know, we kind of have an idea what next steps, is that there's gonna be some prioritization and so on, we'll review that in a moment. But just in terms of what we've done, looking back, anything else that you see or staff needs clarification on, or what's changed, or?
I don't think so from my perspective. I like the fact that we got some enablers. I like the fact that we were able to go back and refine many of those, and I think we have a common understanding of what most of those look like now. And then now it's all of it kind of putting it together into a format and then massaging that into something that becomes a very useful document.
Okay, anything else from anyone else, any comments, questions, any feedback? You guys read the room, I opened it up before, to everyone, if you're going, somebody went down to get food or something, but anything from you guys, from
I
the
think
point or
we're
anything
on-
else you see?
I think we're on the right track. Looks good.
Lindsay, any observation?
For my first experience, it's really great. Fun. Yeah, enjoying it. Love the whole
Okay, so in terms of, everyone else, how are we all with this, as we're sort of leading off today, and then we'll talk next steps after that, but what we have, any additional feedback, comments, questions? Teresa?
I have to say, I just thought it was a highlight that our Post-it stickers were very similar, if not very similar, to the stuffs. So I think that's a good sign. If there was major differences, then we would have a major problem, right?
And we're actually, I'll put it out there, just, is there anything else that somebody identified in the post-it that hasn't been captured here, that needs to be thrown into a bullet point for now? Because we can, not everything has to absolutely stick today, we're not gonna define it all, but I think we've got a good basic grouping. So is there anything else that anybody had that would like some attention, just be tossed on for now, or would like to speak to? That's the other thing, I think we're all, like, if you look at, like, we're all basically on the same page with a lot of it. Anything else?
Curiosity, Doug, there's three that lay all by themselves up here. I'm just curious what they are.
They're all green.
Green and future.
Green, yeah.
Okay.
Mike? Yeah, well, I think of the 6 or 8 core topics that we started with, we've expanded and had a real good look at them. And it fits a lot of the categories that we're coming from. So it's just a matter of upgrading it and treating them as some subtopics a little more seriously than we have in the past. It's just a matter of putting a list up and going again.
Thank you. Just a final comment. I mean, looking back on our strategic plan from what we did before, we have accomplished a lot. You know, we have accomplished a lot, and the stuff, some of the items that are still on the list are in the process of being accomplished. Not all the things on the list, but I would say most of the things on the list. And, you know, that's something to be very proud of as, you know, sitting here around the table and, you know, everybody seems to be on the same page with a lot of the ideas that we have, including staff. And that's very encouraging. We're moving in the right direction for our town.
Thanks for that, great points, and something good to keep in mind, how much has been done. I mean, some of the capital projects we've done for a town our size, and if we can pull this rink off this year, we've done pretty much all the major capital. Then you start the planning for the inevitable updates when the sewer comes and water, but they're both in good shape. The water isn't new. Don't smirk too much back there, Mr. CAO. But you've got, then you're just back to preparing for the inevitable time when you've got whether it's a breakdown or it's just an update. So we're actually in pretty good shape as far as that goes. And then there's the water tower too. We've got a grant in for that, so we are planning. So yeah, we have come a ways in some major areas. So in terms of next steps, Greg, we give this back to you, I guess, to formulate it, try to make sense of all this.
And then throw it back again.
Yeah, and bring it back to us, so we'll see everything laid out for the bullet points. If you could share it with us in advance, obviously, so we can take a kick at the can through email. And if anybody has anything else to think of after this, please, send it on. And like right now, things can exist in the bullet points, and maybe we can tweak or adjust or move them on or off. And the other thing we probably should take, and I don't have the list in front of me today, Ray did remind us the public component of this. Do have the LED lighting, maybe there's other options on there, maybe if staff can take a look at that in conjunction with Greg, if there's some things maybe we need to really take a serious look at, because the LED lighting actually slipped my mind today completely, and it is something that was relatively high on the surveys, and so it is probably something we should take a look at. So if there's anything else, we should identify that before it comes back as well. So I think we're good today, unless anyone wants to stay any longer, by all means, we'll leave the lights on for you. But if there's anything else, we'll just leave off then with this today. And I think we've got good direction for coming forward. What is a reasonable time for advancing this process to the next stage?
2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're good today then. Thanks again, Greg, for putting all this together. You got the homework to take away from it. So, but I think we any questions at all too, please fire back to us, and like we'll say we'll try to make the next step is we've got a good solid document to discuss when we come back. Excellent. Thanks very much. Media questions, our gallery is gone. So 6, confirming bylaw 03/2020. Councilor McConnell, you have that motion.
I did make a comment. Myself, seconded by Councilor Jansen, that bylaw 03/2020 being about the confirmed proceedings of the special meeting of January 11th, 2020, be read first and second time.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Discussion, seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Myself, seconded by Councilor Jansen, about 3/2020 being about the confirmed proceedings of the special council meeting of January 11th, 2020, be read a third time, passed and signed by the mayor and clerk.
Thank you again, Councilor McConnell. All in favor? Motion's carried. And right on to item 7, our motion for adjournment. We're 15 minutes early, which is all good. Councilor Ostrander, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Shankar, that the meeting adjourned Monday, November 27th, 2020, 6 p.m. Times 2:48 p.m.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ostrander. All those in favor? Motion carried. We're adjourned. Thanks everyone for watching.
I'm calling for, bro.